And we're back. Bob Blackburn is the man in charge of the State Historical Society and joins us now. Bob, welcome.
Well, thank you, Sam. It's good to be here.
I expected from you, by reputation, I expected to be, what, 7, 8 feet tall?
Well, thank you.
You've survived so much over the years and done so much to help the Historical Society grow. As you look back, are you pleased?
Oh, I am. It's been a rewarding experience, largely because I get to work with people around the state who share a passion for history. Because what we do, we collect, preserve, and share our story. So listening to my grandmother here in Claremore tell stories about her family going to North Texas during the Civil War and then coming back to Claremore in 1911. The Rogers County Coal Company, where 2 of my uncles and 1 of my aunts work, and hearing those stories. And then my other grandmother in Chickasha, Civil War stories. I grew up around history, and to me it's personal, and I take it personal that we all need to be collecting this story, and it's our job to preserve it, to share it with future generations.
It is a very, very important element. And you know, it's interesting. Oklahoma is my adopted state. My wife and I and our daughters moved here many years ago. And there are still tracks in stone on the Arkansas River from Stan Wade's men from the Civil War days, from the Battle of Cabin Creek. And I have very often, I've had the experience of driving down the freeway, and off in the distance you see smoke. Now that can either be a farmer clearing his land, or it can be an Indian ceremony that goes back many, many hundreds of years. So we have such a rich, diversified heritage in Oklahoma that other states can't lay claim to.
Well, and a lot of people say, why don't Oklahomans feel about their history like they do in Texas? Well, in Texas you had more of a mass movement of population all at once. You have a defining event. You know, the Battle of San Jacinto, remember the Alamo. Well, that unified them. In Oklahoma, we're like a patchwork quilt. Exactly. Every little piece comes from a different place for a different reason at a different time with different people, everyone carrying their cultural baggage. One of the beauties of a Will Rogers story is that Will Rogers found a way to bring all of these people together into this common heritage, this common story as we are the people. We come from the land. We've looked for hope. We've survived the Trail of Tears. We survived the Dust Bowl. Here we are, and he expressed something that was enduring about the human spirit. But I can see that whether it's Cimarron County or McCurtain County or Tillman County or Craig County. We have those stories.
We have some video from the Oklahoma City facility of the Historical Society that I'd like to have them roll if we could. Here, why don't you just take us through what we're seeing here, Bob?
This is a new exhibit that we just opened. We believe that we've got to update and change constantly. So every year we will open at least one new exhibit. This is an 8,000 square foot exhibit on the history of free enterprise in Oklahoma. We went back 300 years and have brought that story to the present, connecting the dots between the decision that those French traders made in trading with the Wichita and the Comanche to the people who created TG&Y in the 1930s in western Oklahoma, to the stories of B.C. Clark, of Jack Zink in the Tulsa area. You can see C.R. Anthony came to Oklahoma, started his retail. These are all images of these different stories, little episodes of our history. We bring it all the way to the present, and one of the concluding stories is tribal enterprise. What have American Indians done to not just seek self-rule, which they pretty much got in the 1970s, but self-determination, weaning themselves from the federal grants that limited what they could do. Enterprise was the only way to develop a tax base to be able to reach out. So we do this story all the way from American Indians trading with the French to American Indians today running their enterprises and reinvesting back in this community.
And it was a busy area too, a very busy area from the get-go. We had so many Indian tribes that came here. This was the Bakersfield, California of its time, because they'd meet in the middle, they would trade, then go back their separate ways. Then when the forced removal hit, and all of a sudden you had tribes living here, the trading really changed just a bit, and then along came the white folk, and it really changed.
Well, there are several common themes in all of this. One is you have to be willing to take a risk to drive the economy forward. So whether it was the King of France sending his men over here, it might take 2 years to get the goods and get them back to France, but he was willing to take the risk. Those Wichita were taking a risk that they could trade their valuables for something of greater value, and then trade them on to the Osage to the north, or to the Comanche to the west. And it's the same today with modern entrepreneurs who have to take a risk. And then once you get beyond that, then connecting the dots, that we're all connected in this. So what one business person does will affect what another business person does, perhaps in another community. So we have to realize that the decisions our leaders make at the state capitol, Washington, D.C., in the county seats, in boardrooms, in those back offices of businesses, those decisions affect others. And we have to understand the path to where we are today to be able to evaluate the stage of history we're walking onto so we can make the best possible decisions that drive the story. So it's my job to collect those stories of what's happened from this point backwards and allow people today to see and to hear and to learn from those stories, and hopefully make us better citizens, vote for the right people, make the right decisions, and again, willing to take a risk. Yes, I'm going to run for public office. Yes, I'm going to start a business. Yes, I'm going to volunteer for my neighborhood association. Whatever it is, we've got to take a risk.
Have you any input at all in the type of Oklahoma history book they use in the public schools here? Because you should have.
Well, I've got some ideas. When I retire here soon, I'm gonna work on a textbook. It's difficult for children, and even through their teen years, to grasp history in a chronological point of view, to connect the dots over this time. It's got to be episodic. You've got to take certain themes from history and say, here is the story to represent this part of our history. So I think there's a better way to teach it, and we ask our teachers to do so much. That's one of the most underappreciated professions out there. And they're so important. We've got to give them better tools.
You know, it's an interesting thing. I guess you can label me a broadcaster, and I would have to say guilty as charged. But in looking back the history of broadcasting, of just broadcasting, we've had them all here. We had Dizzy Dean. We had Walter Cronkite launched his career from here. Edward R. Murrow passed through. Will Rogers, of course. So many giants of the broadcast industry made their bones in Oklahoma in some form or fashion and went on to great things. Now, if that's true for broadcasting, that's also true for other endeavors, is it not?
Very much so. Part of that is the nature of life in Oklahoma. We are a land of immigrants. We've all come from someplace else. You may have come more recently. My family came to Claremore in 1911. Mom's family came to Grady County in 1925, but we're all immigrants. And I think because you start adding these layers of immigrants, we welcome new people. In this, what people comment about Oklahoma almost universally is how friendly the people are. There's something to that. And when Oklahomans go to Los Angeles, they're willing to work hard because it's not easy here. They're friendly. They're willing to take a chance, because here you have to take a chance. No one's going to give it to you. And they do well, whether it's in Hollywood or it's New York on the stage, like Kristen Chenoweth or Kelly O'Hare, or Ron Howard, who was born in Duncan, Oklahoma, or Bob Dotson, who went from WKY television to NBC. I once asked Bob about that. I said, why did all of these very talented broadcasters come to Oklahoma? He says, Oklahoma stations tended to have the best toys because the oil men would invest.
That's right.
Harold Stewart would invest in television in Oklahoma City.
Well.
Jimmy Lake in the Griffin family would invest in television. The Gaylord family in Oklahoma City. John Kirkpatrick, Dean McGee. KOCO was founded by Robert S. Kerr, Dean McGee, and John Kirkpatrick. And so they were willing to put their money into it, to take a risk, and to get the toys.
That's right.
And that attracted them.
You just mentioned the name. Harold Stewart was an old friend, and it really opened so many doors for me as I'm struggling to get started. But I recall Harold, at one time Assistant Secretary of the Air Force under Dwight Eisenhower. He had so many interests, and he nurtured KVOO radio from its birth. And he gave birth to a wonderful, wonderful broadcast facility. And a lot of folks in this part of the state who are new have no idea how that all came about. We got about 2 minutes, and we're going to have Tad Jones on in just a couple of moments from the Will Rogers Museum. But I I want to ask you about something before we go to a little short break. Right now, we're in one of the worst budget-cutting situations I've ever seen in Oklahoma. Is this hurting the Oklahoma Historical Society, and if so, to what extent?
Where it's hurting us is that our future depends on our staff. We've got to have the people who share the passion that I have for this. We've got to be able to recruit young people to say, yes, I will work for very low wage in this entry-level job so I can learn how to be a historic preservationist, to save old buildings, or to save artifacts, or to catalog, broadcast, film. We've got to have these new people coming on to take the place of us old-timers. I'm worried that we will not be able to recruit that next generation of people to carry on. Because yes, we can lose some staff positions, we can cut back hours of operation, maybe have to save here and there, but we cannot replace those people overnight. It takes decades to build culture in any institution. I've been at the Historical Society 37 years, and in that 37 years, we've changed the culture from acceptable mediocrity to higher standards. Yes, we will be an affiliate of the Smithsonian and the National Archives. We will have an office of the National Park Service. We will be part of moving everybody forward. We can't step back. We've got to maintain those standards. We've got to have the efficiencies, even with fewer resources, even more efficient, and then find the partners who will then join us in this mission to collect, preserve, and share. If we can do all of that, we can survive this, but we're going to have to work a little harder. We've got to make sure that we don't give up on that next generation to say, oh, we're just going to ride this out and retire into the sunset. We have to believe that there's hope for the future.
Bob, I hate to do this, but we have to stop for a little break, and we'll come back with Mr. Tad Jones right after this.